Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the MitsuTimes podcast. Today, my guest is Mr. Jeremiah Coakley. He is the owner and driver of the Ghost 2G. I'm sure you've seen me post about it because he does a little bit of drag racing, a little bit of autocross, a little bit of racing. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm great. Definitely glad to have you on. I love to see people doing something different with the 2G. As much as I love drag racing as a drag racer myself, it's always cool to know that the 2G is capable of some other stuff.
I appreciate it, yeah.
Well, let's get right into it with a little icebreaker, Jeremiah. So, if your Ghost 2G were a character in a movie, who would it be and why?
The Gray Ghost in Speed Racer 2008. It's one of my favorite movies of all time to this day, as well as my brother's, and that character in particular as a plot device was just hilarious to me. So as goofy and colorful as the whole thing is from the outset, it really works as a story of overcoming in the pursuit of one's ultimate passion, which is like an overanalyzation, I know, but like that's where a lot of the excitement around racing started for me when I was like really young. So
Gotcha.
that's why I call it the Gray Ghost.
That I was going to say, is that what inspired the name?
Yeah. And it's actually my third Ghost, my third Eclipse.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, but I have the name because I made my username when I had my second.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, is it that Speed Racer that got you into motorsports in the first place, or was it kind of was it a family thing? Was it something else?
Well, I guess it was kind of both. As a kid, my brother and I, we were always into cars. And at one point in time, this guy came to live with my family to finish pursuing college. He had an Acura RSX Type S, and it was a true tuner car. He was sort of part of that world. And long story short, he taught me to drive stick when I was still pretty young. Years later, I taught my brother and helped him buy his first car, which ended up being a Mitsubishi Lancer. And as for motorsports specifically, my brother and I were talking one night a few years back, speculating about how we could actually have fun pushing our cars legally. And at this point, he had a 3.8 Genesis Coupe at a BMW 335 Xi. We did some research, discovered HPDE track days, and went to our first one together at NCM Motorsport Park in 2021 with Binge Tokyo, now known as Binge Track Days.
Okay.
And after that, but we would both quickly become rather discontent with our vehicles and decided to each pursue different platforms.
That's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so this obviously isn't your first performance car. Was the BMW kind of the only one, or was there some more along the line?
Well, this Eclipse GSX is kind of my first real performance car.
Gotcha.
I did previously have the N54 BMW, and I did mod it and took it to the track that one time. And before that, I owned a couple Eclipses and a couple RSXs, but the current DSM is the first car I've really committed to performance driving.
Okay. So what was it that drew you to the 2G platform specifically? Was it the all-wheel drive aspect, or was it, kind of, did you have a little taste of the DSM culture going into it?
Yeah, so my first car was a 420A Eclipse. It was rough, but it was mine. I wanted one since high school when I saw an Eagle Talon with an Eclipse front bumper on cars.com while in entrepreneurship class or something. It was years later, I did end up getting a 99 non-turbo Eclipse. Later on, owned a GST as well for a few years. But what convinced me to go for the GSX I currently have was I was debating whether or not to abandon the N54 I had after our first track event. That wheel drive, but it was twin turbo, super sweet car, but I believed it was a miracle it survived the track event, and it was already excessive to maintain as a street car. So I was actually considering switching to something like an E46 M3. I mean, as if that would help. It would still be expensive to maintain and such, but it's a good track platform. Like a lot of people drive E46s on the track. But then I saw some videos of John Frund. I think that's how you say his last name, actually. TSI at VIR, which I'm pretty sure is his home track. And it really got me considering that maybe it could be worth the effort it would take to track a DSM. And ultimately, that's what I decided. I found the GSX I currently have on Craigslist near the West Coast, made a deal sight unseen, deciding I was willing to deal with whatever came with it, which ultimately ended up being a blown engine. But that's another story. Overall, though, I enjoyed the DSM community much more than I enjoyed the BMW N54 community.
And that's saying a lot, too, because sometimes being a 420A, in the DSM community, it can be rough. So I'm glad that you stuck it out.
Yeah.
So give us a rundown on this car. What do you got going on under the hood?
So the motor is fully built. It's got an Evo crankshaft, Eagle rods, Wesco pistons, King bearings, HKS 272 cams. It's got an ACT twin disc since iron clutch. It's on NK wheels, Yokohama Advan tires. I believe K-Sport coilovers. They were put on by the previous owner. As for forced induction, I've now got a Volvo 13G spooling an FP Red UHF, so like compound turbo setup.
Oh, wow. No kidding.
Yeah, that's a recent update. I recently finished that project.
So what motivated you to go that route?
My tuner Steven, I was complaining. Well, okay, not complaining, but I was noticing how the setup I had an FP Red on the car after the engine was rebuilt and everything, which is a great turbo, but it lights up kind of late in the rev range, and that's just sort of the way it is for turbos of that size. It is what it is. And I was considering actually switching to a smaller turbo, or the most conventional move probably would have been to go to like a Zona rotor turbo or something like that. Those are great turbos. But Steven was basically like, hey, what if like what you could do is you could do a compound turbo setup. And I was like, what, you mean like twin turbo? He's like, no, compound turbo. Like you use the smaller turbo to spool the bigger turbo. Never heard of it before in my life. Looked it up, and usually it seems that it's used by drag racers who are trying to spool like really big turbos. So it's like the bigger the turbo you go, typically the later it spools. That's just sort of the way it is. Right. There are a few people who have done it very effectively. One of them, I believe, being Kevin Jewer. He's got the rear-wheel drive Talon. That's a compound turbo car. I don't know if that's what he's racing right now. But I knew next to nothing. And I was like, oh, also, if I do this and I screw this up, I'm not going to live it down. And but decided to take it as a learning opportunity and such. And I was going to trade the Red for a couple of bigger turbos, because that seemed to be what people do. But Steven was actually like, hey, if you put a really small turbo on there to spool the one you currently have, because I didn't necessarily care about having more power. The FP Red makes a fine amount of power for me. He's like, you could get that power much sooner. And I was like, yeah, sounds like a fun project. And it took a bit to decide, but when I decided to commit to it, I just committed. And it's really cool. It's a lot of fun. Like I definitely get it. Some people are like, why would you even bother with smaller turbos? But it sounds amazing. It spools insanely fast. It's unbelievable. It's hilarious.
That's what matters.
Yeah.
So, I've only really been focused on one type of racing the whole time I've owned my car. So I'm curious as to what drivetrain modifications that you need to do, what kind of upgrades to be able to go to the drag strip and then do autocross, or vice versa.
Yeah, so on my car, I don't have as many upgrades as I would like to, like the drive shaft, transfer case, axles, all that stuff stock still currently. It's what I was going to prioritize before deciding to go compound turbo, because that adds like a level of complication that I'm going to have to take the time to dial in. But as far as that stuff goes, it could really benefit from having some negative camber in it, for one, especially for the road course or autocross, especially. Having gotten to ride with an instructor at my last HPD event, I could really see how, because he was just whipping around a tiny little Honda Fit. His name was Ryan Mukherjee. He's in Grid Life Sunday Cup, and he just happened to be instructing at this event that I was at. Okay. Those cars are very low on power, and they are quick. They're quickest when you set them up right in the wheels and suspension. And I really got to see that. He was going significantly faster than me, and I have this car with all this power that wasn't really able to put it down in the same way. And so that's something I need to explore. And I've talked to others who are doing road course racing, and mostly Jesse Echeneke. And he's been doing the road course thing with his DSM. We actually have the same year car, same color and everything. And he's got it down. Like he has years of experience doing this and all that. And his car is more refined as a track car. But yeah, I need to get to the drivetrain, suspension, and all of that. I will when I'm done goofing off in the corner.
After you're done having fun.
Yeah.
Of the mods that you do have now, what do you think has been the most impactful modification that you've made to help you across all three: drag racing, autocross, and track racing?
The Fuel Tech ECU, 100%, and that's across the board. The old factory wiring was a frequent obstacle before abandoning it, and the Fuel Tech system is just fantastic as a simple-ish solution for being able to prioritize other things. Like, I spent so much time troubleshooting electrical defects, and it was just, I mean, you know how the bird's nest is, like when you're trying to figure out how to get, I dealt with, it was ridiculous until I switched over to a standalone. And now it just offers a certain peace of mind that regardless of setting, whatever I'm doing that weekend, the Fuel Tech systems have been pretty awesome.
Good. So all this work, the compound turbos, a whole new wiring harness, is that stuff that you're doing yourself, or are you taking it somewhere and having it done?
That stuff I did myself alongside Steven, my tuner. He's in Colorado, and we actually shipped the housings between each other. He has a TIG welder. I had never welded before, but I got a MIG welder. I did the exhaust side. He, I already mentioned, did the housings so that we could do V-bands with them to make it easier for me to figure out the fabrication over on my end. So basically he simplified a lot so I could focus on learning to MIG weld and put the pieces together here. Prior to that though, like the wiring and with the wiring and the compounds and all that, a lot of that was done in my garage / his up there. Before that though, like I definitely do owe a ton of gratitude to shop that rebuilt my motor, because when I bought the car, the motor was blown. I ended up selling my BMW to fund the motor rebuild. And then Continental Motor Works in Nashville, they got the car back up and running, so I had a much better starting point. And Modified Import Repair in Clarksville, they installed the twin disc since iron clutch and helped work out some of the kinks to get the car where I could drive it around and sort of start to really figure stuff out. So like they got the conventional setup working, and from there I basically tore out all the wiring because it all sucked and just sort of had to figure it out. And I was bumping my way through the dark for a long time doing that.
So I can only speak for the shootout because this is the only time I really see something like this, where you can drag race and autocross in the same event. What is it like to, even if it's not on the same event, what is it like to go from autocross racing to drag racing, or from, drag racing to track racing? how do you adjust?
I think it's kind of nerve-wracking, but it's really fun. And it's also funny because my intention was just to have a dedicated road course car, but I realized autocross is both less expensive and less taxing on the car, so I figured it could be a good way to shake it down between bigger events. Um, like I actually had my oil pan that's in the car. It's a stock oil pan. Usually what people do is put an AccuSump in the car, which is a fantastic thing to do for it because you can pre-oil the engine and it pumps oil into the pan if it detects low oil pressure. Mm-hmm. But what we did, and Bobby Gould gave me this advice a few years back, and Steven ended up helping me with this. One of the first things he really helped me with to get me to more events last year. I just got a new stock oil pan, and he welded baffles into it. He welded it a particular way, and I was able to run the car like that. But besides that, as for like between the different types of racing, like I said, it was supposed to just be road course. Then I realized, well, autocross is less taxing. Like I won't be having to worry about the like oil starvation as much, for one.
Right.
And then drag strip, I realized it was a cheaper way to dial in the car than going to the dyno. Like when I went to the dyno after finishing my wiring and all that and stuff, I just hadn't had a chance to really make sure everything was together. I felt like I was wasting all this money at the dyno because nothing was working and I have to go back and all that. And I was like, what if I just went to the drag strip, like made a drag strip? And now I can't go to the drag strip and not try and set a new PB to submit to MitsuTimes. So now it's a correct car.
Becomes an addiction fast.
Yeah.
So in driving your 2G in these different racing disciplines, do you find that the 2G GSX is better suited for one discipline rather than the other?
I mean, I can see why drag racing seems to be the most prominent. It seems to have been really developed for that by like some of the really hardcore enthusiasts, for one, but also it's not really an endurance oriented vehicle to start with, but the 4G63 really is a resilient powerhouse of a motor. It just takes a lot of work to get it to behave consistently. Mm-hmm. And even that's less about the motor and it's more about literally everything else. Just getting the whole thing to stay together. And people have found a lot of creative ways to do that. And yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Jeremiah, over the years, has there been a particular race or event that has really stood out to you as something that you'll never forget with this car?
Yes. SCCA track night last July, so almost a year ago now. I had deleted my power steering, hadn't installed the hydroelectric pump yet. I hoped it might be fine, but especially with no real suspension mods, it was next to impossible to control the car at high speeds through those turns. I lost control, spun out, and I was lucky I didn't lose the car, honestly. I was fine, the car was fine, and I got back on track, but was immediately black flagged, which turned out to just be that my bumper had come unlatched. It could have been so much worse. Like I was going down and back straight. I wasn't doing anything reckless. When I lost the car, it's too heavy to pull back. Like our steering racks are too slow. Like I said, with no real suspension modifications or anything, I didn't stand a chance. But I got back out there, did the other sessions, even though I was fighting overheating issues, and I'm glad I did because the initial shock spooked me so bad it could have completely turned me off this stuff for a while. But I think finishing out the day really helped me. And also filming everything has kind of helped me in a way I didn't expect as well. I actually did not film that. I actually do wish that happening. I was like, are you kidding me? This thing wasn't working. But maybe even that was for the best.
It's kind of a learning lesson.
Literally, yep. Absolutely.
Okay. So how do you adjust your driving type or your driving style and your mindset when it comes to each of these different disciplines?
So I really just think in terms of what could I see myself worrying about, and I focus on that because there is so much that you can do. There is always too much to do, and so much that I'm going without. I'd never race if I waited to get it all done, and that's just that's just how I handle it. I was very much, oh, I can't do this until I do that, or until I do that. And, that's another thing that Steven had been massively helpful with since he and I sort of started working together. Like he sort of changed my mindset about stuff like that.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by BeanFab. Keith at BeanFab does everything from custom fabrication, turbo setups, exhaust, intercooler pipes, transmission builds, porting, engine builds, and even wiring. He's one of the best in the business. You can find BeanFab products installed on many of the top cars on our MitsuTimes list. Contact them at beanfab.com. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. We all know, everybody listening to this, that DSMs have a cult following. I mean, you either love them or you hate them. Everybody listening probably loves them, if I had to guess. So, what do you think it is about the GSX or the all-wheel drive in particular that makes it such an enduring platform? I mean, we're going on 30 years old, and they're still we still talk about them. We're still making parts for them. What do you think it is about it?
I think it's because it's a cultural icon. Like between Fast and Furious and Need for Speed Underground alone, it represents symbols of escapism from our childhood. But its staying power comes from having the same heart as the Evo, as well as the people who dedicated themselves to keeping the platform alive and figuring out how to integrate new technology with it. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the coolest thing to see people go as far out of their way as they do to keep driving them on the street, much less racing them. And it's not even like now that, especially since I came from driving my BMW to driving this car, it's not that this car is insanely difficult to work on. It's actually significantly easier than what I was working on before. But I think part of what it is just its age now, and also the accessibility to getting a good starting point. Right. I think one of the most effective ways, if I could do everything over again, what I'd probably do is get a rolling shell for as cheap as I could, something with no rust, get an engine separately, and literally like Lego build the car like that, because it's difficult taking, most of these cars are someone else's project, right, at some point or another, even a 420A, and I respect it because I've loved every Eclipse that I've had, but I wasn't doing with my previous ones what I'm doing with this one. I knew very little about how to work on cars and such at the time, and I don't fault anyone who's just trying to enjoy themselves and just happen to like this car, but like when you look at the upper echelons of what some people have done with them, I mean, like Devin Schultz over at Boosted, like squeezing 2,000 horsepower out of a four-cylinder engine like that. That's absolutely insane. And that's like, does he currently hold the record for fastest four-cylinder H pattern in the world? Or maybe it's just here. I'm not sure, but
it goes back and forth between him and the Speed Factory boys. But I do believe that Devin is the holder right now.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that makes it so relevant now, and it's not a super commonly known car like with younger people. I literally had we were visiting our hometown, my wife and I, and one of her little cousins was like, I guess he'd heard about my car, and he was like, oh, do you have a Mitsubishi Evo? And I was like, no, but I have the same motor that the Mitsubishi Evo has. And he was like, oh, completely disinterested at that point. So maybe it doesn't quite go that far, but I think they'll be worth what Evos were at some point, especially with all the people who are like mad scientists doing to them what they're doing today, right, and all that. I think they were a slept on car in terms of like when you juxtapose it with the Supra, how valuable that car is now, or like the Skyline. And I never liked those cars as much as I loved the Eclipse. I feel lucky that car even though it's so culturally significant, it didn't quite catch on the same way to where you
Right.
can get them. You can kind of get them still. But yeah.
They're still affordable.
Yeah, yeah. If you want one, you can find one. It's just a matter of like what level are you willing to really pour into it to get it to work properly, unless you happen to get lucky and find something that someone's been storing away for like the past 10, 20 years.
For sure. So, well, I mean, speaking of, the 2G being a cultural icon, what is it? There's a lot of misconceptions out there about 2Gs and a lot of stereotypes about the owners. What do you think it is that a lot of people just kind of don't care for the 2G, or maybe it's just like the misconceptions of the car are so much that they're not really interested.
I really do not know. I actually have no idea what the answer to that would be, because I mean it's such they just don't. The only car I've really been impressed by in terms of design in the past 10 years is probably the A90 Supra, and it sort of has like the curves, like the body lines and all that, and it's still like a modern car, but they don't design cars with a unique spirit in mind anymore, and I feel like the 2G is one of the cars from its time that really embodies that. Maybe I'm getting like way too philosophical with it, but I do think it's like really interesting that it was sort of missed, in terms of people. And also, again, it could go back to what I was saying earlier about how it's difficult to keep them together, like Evos are they were set up and expected to, I mean, they were rally cars. The Evo was treated as a rally car, and that's what it was. And long before we had the technology to support the kind of power that people are squeezing out of the cars we have today, the Eclipse didn't stand a chance at doing something like that back when it would have been important to sort of stake its claim, I suppose. So maybe that's what it is.
I think it goes to what you were saying earlier also, of like, if you buy one, it's almost certainly been not very well taken care of.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, you kind of spoke about it a little bit, but let's talk about the DSM community. I feel like they're one of those, well, when I say they're, I really mean we're one of those kind of all for one for all kind of people, but, what's your take on it?
Well, like how strong the DSM culture is today.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'd say it's very strong. I previously sort of like, with my previous cars, I sort of stayed in my own lane, and that was sort of just because I just wanted to have the car to drive around and such, and I wasn't that focused on. I didn't feel like I had the time to really focus on learning it and all that. But with this car, I actually made a DSM Tuners account for the first time in like 2021. I hadn't been on the forums before, and I was just pleasantly surprised by I'd gotten a bit weathered anyway, I guess, by being in the BMW community. You ask a question and everybody's like, "Oh, this idiot's asking a question." I know that still happens, but like in the DSM community, a lot of times they're just really great people. Like people who are very passionate and who have put a lot. When you do not have to put so much effort into maintaining a car this old, when there's so many more viable platforms and such, and I'm really taken aback by a lot of I don't know, just the nature of a lot of the people who are in the DSM community. Like, I'm sure there's some negative experiences here and there, but for the most, just really great people. And I know that's a very general statement. And then more than anything, I mean, you mentioned the shoot in this year. It's been going on for so long, and I didn't realize, because I wasn't really that plugged in with my previous cars, but now I'm like, I saw a lot of the shootout coverage from last year, and I was like, sheesh, there's a lot going on up there in Ohio. And that seems like it would be really fun to go to. Really be fun to get to see other people's projects in person, and get to race alongside of. Like, it would be so weird seeing so many DSMs running at the same time too. It'd be so funny.
That
That's
is
weird.
always it always feels like an out of body experience for sure.
Yeah.
So you talked about being on tuners, and obviously a lot of the Facebook groups. Uh, we would both. I think we would agree that it, for the most part, they're overall very positive experiences, and people aren't just bashing each other or telling everybody how crappy their build is or anything like that.
Yeah. For the most part, it's not that hostile. I mean, I say it, like literally last week, at like a little like thing, but it wasn't like nothing is that deep, you know. Like I think a lot of people are sort of just like, hey, we're here doing this for fun, you know, and this is very hard to do. Like, um, just this hobby, like being an automotive enthusiast, like you're dumping so much of yourself into your project, and you just want it to work. You just want it to be able to drive and all that. There are so many people who sort of really seem to get that and who don't have to be patient and choose to be anyway. And I really appreciate that out of people, you know. And I mean, I myself, like, I also love when, and I'm not the most knowledgeable person, but I love when I am able to help other people as well figure out stuff that, even if it was just a few months ago, I was like, what on earth is going on here? You know. Um, I think this community is very good at like sharing knowledge, and yeah.
So going back to your car, are you aiming to specialize? Like, I know you originally you said that you wanted just a purpose-built autocross car. Is that still the
Road
plan?
chart.
I'm sorry. Earlier you said you wanted a specialized road racing car. Is that still the plan, or do you want to kind of keep it to where you can still race all three?
I think I definitely want to be able to do all three because it's ironically almost the most practical. My number one priority right now is figuring out the kinks with the compound turbo setup, which puts me behind where I could be if I just went straight to focusing on drivetrain and suspension and such. But we'll get around to it, and I really would love to. I would love to do like grid life and stuff like that. But I realized at the same time, I would probably be content if, like, one weekend I was able to go to SCCA time trials, NASA's time trial thing, another time. Maybe the car needs a bit of a break and I just want to shake it down. I'll take it to the autocross. Maybe I go to the drag strip another weekend. You know, like that kind of just really works for where I currently am with everything. So, it'll probably stay triple threat in that sense.
Okay, I like that plan.
Yeah.
So, are there any? You talked about doing certain events. Is there any big goals or any like, is there a time or a track that you really want to run, or even a grid life event, or I know they do like a points championship. Is that something that you have in mind?
I would love to do grid life, specifically like time attack, maybe mid Ohio or maybe stuff in the Midwest or Eastern region. If I could travel a bit, that would be awesome. But if I can't, I actually live fairly close to two tracks, NCM and Nashville Superspeedway, and I really would be content to just go between those two and do some other like autocross drag racing events in between. And but yeah, it would be my ultimate goal to be able to travel further and get to actually meet up with other DSMers who are tracking their cars and be like, hey, like, let's they do want to collaborate, want to do, like, whether they want to do a video, whether they want to just race for fun, because I don't know, this community's fun.
For sure, I agree. So let's hypothetically say that you hit the Tennessee lottery there. You got unlimited funds. What are you doing? What's the ultimate version of this car look like?
Uh, I would knock out the drivetrain and suspension upgrades, put in a built transmission, and race it constantly. Um, I I've pretty much got the car, like the heart of the car, to how I really want it now. I think I'm going to stick with this setup. It's kind of weird, and I like that. And I I don't care that much about squeezing a ton of power out of it. I just want the power that I have quickly. And so if I could reinforce it so I felt safe and like I could trust the car more, I would be like, I would seriously be set. And that's sort of what I've dedicated the past couple of years to doing. So even if I don't get a really good event this year, like where I feel like everything's really, really dialed, I hope maybe by next year, I can really just focus on uh, like aesthetic type stuff because I'll have all that other stuff dialed in. But yeah, if I had all the money in the world, I just need to knock out a few things to make sure that it doesn't fall apart beneath me, and like the rolling casket it is already.
All right, so I'm gonna rapid fire you some questions here, and tell me your answers. So, what is your favorite track that you've raced at so far?
NCM Motorsport Park.
All right, what has been your worst breakdown or mechanical failure?
Fortunately, I haven't had anything catastrophic happen quite yet, but after the last drag strip event a few weeks back, I couldn't get my temps under control because my fans went out, so I ended up waiting in a parking lot watching a busy intersection for like an hour, waiting for my temps to come down enough to get to the interstate so I could make it home.
Okay. And what is your most underrated mod that you've added?
I've already sung Field Tech's praises, but the compound turbo setup is pretty cool. I know some people don't get it or think it's pointless. And my power, I'm telling you, it's fun.
And I bet it's gonna, a lot of people are gonna be keeping an eye on how that works out and
Yeah, longevity
all
of it.
that stuff. Yeah, for sure. So let's say that someone else out there, maybe they have a 2G, maybe they're just, have a Mitsubishi in general. They're looking to build their car to race across these three disciplines. What advice would you give them for their build so that they get, the best bang for their buck and they're able to be successful at all three disciplines?
Just ask yourself what you can't go without. And not as much in terms of safety, like definitely be safe, like comply with the rules of whatever class you're running and all that, but more in terms of what would it take to get seat time?
Seat time is just as important as upgrades, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Like figure out how to get there and let it all come together as you go. Like you meet people and they'll help you figure it out.
So, Jeremiah, I know you were just talking about how you really enjoyed making videos and kind of showing your progress. Where can people find and follow you so they can see these videos?
So my username is GHSTII, GHSTII, on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok.
Well, at the end, I always give people an opportunity to give a shout out to people who's helped them along the way, people who've helped get their car where it is. Is there anybody that you want to give a thanks or a shout out to?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, my wife. We've always supported each other in our most ambitious pursuits, and she's always been there encouraging this passion of mine. Secondly, the people I work with, like my tuner Steven Johnson, for revolutionizing the way I see working on cars and helping me get it to where it is today. Jason Drew, who I don't interact with a ton, but he's always been willing to answer my questions, and he recently gave me a good deal buying his old brake kit off of him. And I've got to mention Lane Fox, who put in some serious work into painting my bumper last year before a big event I was prepping for. And I'm supposed to get with him soon to paint the whole thing once and for all. And lastly, shout out to anyone else who's ever helped me or kept up with my project online. And I really appreciate it.
Real quick, this is off topic, but speaking of Jason Drew, we just want to give a shout out, speedy recovery to Jason. He's undergoing back surgery if he hasn't already. We wish you the best. Hope you get back in the 2G as soon as possible, man.
Absolutely. Speedy recovery, Jason.
Jeremiah, I appreciate you coming on and taking the time to tell your story and tell the story of your car. I hope that we can inspire some more 2G guys to maybe get out of their comfort zone and maybe do autocross or try out the shootouts max effort. I always love watching either drag 2Gs do a autocross pass or autocross 2Gs do a drag pass. That's always fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I really hope I can go to the shootout this year. Sounds like it would be so much fun. So.
Well, all right, man.
Yeah,
thanks again. I can't wait to see you at the track.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.